Boinky blinked once and pushed off his mattress. That was his first mistake. His feet hit the floorboards and vanished into a blur of motion. He did not walk. He launched. He slammed into his bedroom door, the frame splintering outward as he transformed into a human torpedo. He hit the street and gathered speed, his limbs flailing as he skipped over the pavement like a flat stone across a pond. Neighbors dove into doorways to avoid the collision. He couldn't stop. He couldn't even slow down. He became a streak of colour hurtling toward the centre of town. The Rainbow Cake Shop loomed ahead. Boinky hit the glass front at full velocity. The impact sounded like a thunderclap. Shells buckled. Layered cakes, towers of frosting, and trays of pastries erupted into a thick, colourful mush that coated the walls and floor. Boinky skidded through the wreckage, his momentum carrying him past the shattered counter and into the back storage room, leaving a trail of ruined dessert in his wake. He tried to pivot, his feet spinning uselessly against a slick floor, and ricocheted off a steel refrigerator with a hollow clang. The town mayor grabbed the rope of the great rubber bell and pulled until his knuckles turned white. 7 distinct booming clangs echoed across the valley, signalling a state of emergency. Citizens gathered near the ruined cake shop, watching as Boinky continued his uncontrollable trajectory through the gardens of the neighbourhood. Then, a low mechanical hum vibrated through the pavement. A massive mobile laboratory rounded the corner, its tyres humming against the street. It screeched to a halt, hydraulic stabilizers slamming into the asphalt with enough force to crack the sidewalk. The rear doors hissed open. Out stepped Dr. Grip. She walked with a rigid, purposeful gait, her eyes scanning the destruction left by Boinky. Her robot clamp stumbled behind her, nearly dropping a heavy wrench into a puddle of frosting. Dr. Grip ignored the mess. She stood before the crowd, cleared her throat, and projected her voice over the remaining noise of the sirens. She pointed at the sliding figure of Boinky and spoke with absolute certainty. I have never failed to solve a slipping emergency, and I will not start today. The townspeople stopped their frantic pacing, staring at the lab equipment being unloaded, waiting for the first sign of order in the madness. Boinky did not stop for the lab. He slid straight into the open rear hatch, colliding with 3 steel machines and knocking them from their mounts. Dr. Grip moved with clinical precision, logging the damage. As she maneuvered him toward the testing bay, she aimed her traction scanner at his chest and pulled the trigger. A laser hummed, and the laboratory printer roared to life, spewing a continuous roll of paper that quickly coiled across the floor. It did not stop at 10 meters. It kept printing snake-like until it reached 40 meters of data. Doctor! Grip snatched the end of the sheet, her eyes widening as she scanned the fluctuating lines. The final calculation appeared in bold red ink. Absolute 0. She stared at the paper, then back at the sliding figure. She shoved him into the reinforced bouncing chamber to contain the momentum. Boinky hit the first wall, rebounded into the second, and then surged upward with impossible velocity. He slammed into the ceiling, punched a hole through the metal plating, and launched into the open air above the truck. Doctor Grip watched the empty chamber, her hands trembling as she clutched the long report. For the first time, her expression faltered. The data was not just strange, It defied every law of physics she had ever studied. Dr. Grip did not hesitate. She grabbed a pressurized canister from the wall rack and sprayed Friction Formula 7 directly onto the surface beneath the sliding figure. The mist coated the floor in a thick, tacky layer, but Boinky glided over it as if it were polished ice. He picked up speed, spinning wildly, his momentum increasing with every rotation. She switched tactics, grabbing a vial of molecular grip paste from the centrifuge. With a sharp flick of her wrist, she applied the substance, aiming to bond his surface to the floor. The paste hit the floor and instantly curdled. Instead of stopping, the chemical reaction seemed to lubricate his path further. Boinky rocketed across the room, his velocity surging past previous readings. He ricocheted off the reinforced steel walls, the impact sounds growing sharper and more violent. Clamps scrambled to move the diagnostic monitors, but Boinky slammed into the base of the main console, sending loose tools clattering across the floor. Doctor! Grip watched the monitors pulse with warning lights. The numbers on her screen climbed higher. She realized the issue was not just a lack of friction. The floor was actively rejecting his presence. The lab air grew heavy with the scent of ozone and burnt rubber. Science was failing, and the speed of the slide was becoming dangerous. Dr. Grip reached for the final desperate measure. She flipped the master toggle on the electromagnetic grip beam, aiming the device directly at the ricocheting figure. The machine groaned, emitting a high-pitched whine that vibrated through the floorboards. But the beam did not hold him. It caught the metallic edge of the chamber and snapped back with a violent discharge. The force struck Dr. Grip, lifting her off her feet and slamming her against the far wall. She hit the ground, scrambled up, and was launched again. Once, twice, 3 times. The beam tracked her movement like a magnet, hurling her across the workspace with each surge of energy. Pip stood by the wall, counting each impact. 4, 5. She landed in a heap near the workbench, breathless and disoriented. The machine cut out, leaving the room in a sudden ringing stillness. Dr. Grip pulled herself onto a stool. She did not move. She did not reach for her tools. She did not speak. Minutes ticked by on the wall clock. 1 minute, 2, 3, 4. She sat in total heavy silence, staring at the empty space where the solution should have been. Her hands rested motionless on her knees. The lab was cold, the air thick with the weight of her first absolute failure. Dr. Grip broke the silence by leaning over the terminal. Her eyes scanned the latest printout, searching for any anomaly. She tapped a key, and a faint, prismatic shimmer appeared on the edge of the report. She quickly fed a microsample from the floor into the analyzer. The machine whirred, the internal gears clicking rhythmically before the screen flashed a single word: Snail. She did not wait for further confirmation. She grabbed her kit and marched out of the lab, her boots crunching on the oily pavement. She followed the trail of high-viscosity residue straight to the base of the town waterfall. Behind the curtain of falling water, the Slippy Snail gang sat in a circle. Skiddo, Slick, Gloss, Sheen, and the Wet One looked up their shells, glistening with the same substance that had crippled the town. Doctor! Grip stepped into their lair, the air thick with the smell of concentrated slime. She realized the scale of the disaster These creatures had coated the entire region in oil, 40,000 times more slippery than anything documented in the history of science. The slide was not an accident. It was a calculated campaign. The gang did not flee. They watched her with cold, unblinking eyes, proud of the chaos they had unleashed upon the valley. Dr. Grip returned to her mobile lab, her mind racing with the precise chemical requirements for the counteragent. She cleared the workbench, sweeping aside broken parts to make room for her final creation, Grip Supreme. She began the synthesis, measuring out exactly 43 distinct ingredients. She carefully added crushed rainbow rock, watching as the crystalline dust dissolved into the base solution. Every movement was deliberate. Every drop mattered. She monitored the temperature, adjusting the burners to prevent the mixture from boiling over. Clamp stood by, holding a beaker, his metal joints clicking with each vibration. As the final ingredient hit the liquid, a deep, resonant hum filled the small space. The concoction glowed with a violent, pulsating purple light bubbling against the glass walls of the containment pod. Outside, the town of Rubber Valley had gone still. Citizens pressed against their windows, watching the lab with breathless anticipation. 2 hours passed in total silence. The streets remained coated in the slick, impossible oil, but no one moved. All eyes were fixed on the glowing purple vessel inside the lab, waiting for the chemical reaction to stabilize. The pressure inside the pod mounted, the liquid swirling into a vortex of light, signaling that the supreme grip was nearly ready. The lab began to vibrate. Pip pulled himself up from the floor, stretching his legs, and focused his tiny gaze on the digital timer mounted above the containment pod. The countdown had begun. 10. The purple liquid inside the glass shifted, the color bleeding into a deep electric gold. 9. 8. Outside, the town held its breath, the silence so heavy it felt tangible. 7. 6. Clamp pivoted to adjust a dial, his heavy frame losing balance. He lurched forward, his metallic knee striking the support beam, and he collapsed onto the floor with a deafening clang. Dr. Grip did not flinch. She kept her hand steady on the release lever. 5. 4. The air inside the lab grew thick with static. 3. 2. The golden light intensified, expanding from the center of the pod until it filled every corner of the room, blinding in its brilliance. 1. The containment field locked, the sound of the engagement echoing like a thunderclap. If this final attempt failed, the town would remain locked in its slippery state forever. The energy surged, the light pulsed, and for a fleeting heartbeat, the entire room seemed to hover on the edge of a total permanent collapse. The blinding gold retreated, leaving a lingering hum of static in the air. Inside the pod, the figure shifted. Boinky did not slide. He moved with a sudden, jerky precision, his joints locking into place. He pushed off the bottom of the chamber, his feet biting into the metallic floor with a solid, scraping sound. He hit the release latch. The door hissed open, and he stepped out. He hit the pavement of the town square with enough force to shatter concrete. Yet he did not skid. He did not drift. He planted his heels, the rubber soles gripping the road with a loud, satisfying squeak. He sprang forward, crossing the distance to the town centre. In 2 massive, controlled leaps, he stopped dead. His body remained upright, motionless, a perfect statue of balance against the backdrop of the slick, oil-covered streets. For a second, there was only the sound of the wind. Then the cheering started. It began as a low rumble from the shop fronts and swelled into a roar that echoed off the valley walls. The townspeople surged into the streets, their voices overlapping in a wave of relief. Boinky stood unmoved, his arms folded, his stance unshakable. The era of the slide had ended. Boinky bounded toward the lab truck, his movements heavy and intentional. He reached Dr. Grip and wrapped his arms around her. She stiffened for a fraction of a second, her hands hovering in the air before she finally let them drop to his shoulders. She pulled back and adjusted her stance, clearing her throat with a sharp, rhythmic sound. She muttered that the physical contact was scientifically unnecessary, but a small, involuntary smile pulled at the corners of her mouth. They laughed, the sound cutting through the lingering tension of the day. Nearby, Clamp attempted to perform a celebratory spin, his metal joints grinding as he pivoted. He lost his center of gravity, wobbled for a moment, and collapsed into a heap of clanking limbs. Dr. Grip shook her head, yet her gaze remained fixed on the horizon. Behind the distant waterfall, the air grew thick with a new viscous scent. The snails huddled in the shadows, their eyes gleaming. Skiddo gestured toward a bubbling vat of iridescent sludge, his movements precise and purposeful. The liquid shimmered, reflecting the fading sunlight. They were already stirring the next batch, their movements synchronized and silent. The peace in Rubber Valley was only a temporary measure, and the next wave was already taking shape in the dark.